March 13th, 1997. It's about 8:30 on a clear desert night in Phoenix, Arizona. There are more people outside than usual, hoping to get a good look at the Hale-Bopp comet. What they see instead is an astral phenomenon even more staggering, one that defies common sense or ready explanation.
It was almost like a computer graphic.
Yeah, and it was so big too, you know, and it didn't make a sound. It was like 2 football fields or something. It was very, very big.
We figured about 2 football fields long.
Yeah.
I had a Polaroid camera, but that wouldn't have done anything. I had no camcorder. I had no film in my 35 millimeter. So I said to Bobby, go into record mode. Don't miss anything. This is not normal.
The Lee family, with hundreds of others, claimed to have seen a craft so big it blotted out the stars. Others saw a series of orbs that glowed with a bright yet subtle light.
Take a look at this.
Nobody could deny that something was there.
Oh my God!
Because it was independently seen and independently photographed by people who had not previously been in contact with each other.
Seeing is believing. And I've seen it, and I've documented it on film.
But I'm a believer now. I believe somebody else is visiting us from somewhere.
These are some kind of beings from other worlds, from other planetary systems that have such advanced technology that they have conquered vast distances.
And the question arises, if they exist, what do we do about it? Well, the obvious answer is you try to go visit them. And so we're starting to take the first basic technology and research steps today that might enable us someday to go visit other planets like the Earth.
That March evening in Arizona, something was out there, all right. There were just too many eyewitnesses for there not to be. Onlookers describe a boomerang or carpenter square-shaped vehicle, huge and soundless. Yet whether this was the mother of all UFO sightings or something else remains an enigma. Since the end of World War II, UFO sightings have become so frequent, everyone knows what the letters stand for. Yet a UFO isn't necessarily an alien craft. It's literally an unidentified flying object. Witnesses assume flying saucers, little green men, aliens. Meanwhile, at places like NASA and the European Space Agency, scientists really are building futuristic spacecraft and dreaming up new types of intergalactic technology that rival anything in the pages of science fiction. Actually traveling beyond our solar system to another star is so profoundly difficult that it flies in the face of all we currently know about physics. But scientists press on, hoping for breakthrough discoveries. The idea of aliens visiting Earth perplexes them. If, so far at least, we can't get there from here, how could they get here from there, unless they possess saucer technology far beyond our grasp?
People are open-minded, receptive, even believing in UFO reports, and sometimes even the most exotic UFO reports, while scientists continue to remain somewhere between cautious and actively hostile.
A lot of people don't really understand how science operates. A scientist really can't write or claim something that can't be proven. And UFOs are definitely fit into the category of something that's never been proven.
And yet, there they were in 1997, the so-called Phoenix Lights.
Whoever put on this grand event, and I consider it a grand event, they made the choice of selecting a place where there's a broad range of people, a broad range of societies represented here, from truck drivers to lawyers to doctors, military people, retired and active, aerospace people, and uniformly experiencing something or seeing something they'd never seen before. In most cases had little or no interest, in fact even would ridicule the belief in UFOs.
I must say first off that both my husband and I were both physicians, both skeptics. When these huge amber lights pop up in the sky, you can't take your eyes off them. They are mesmerizing. They're different than anything you've ever seen. They look like spinning balls of energy, and they're rock solid in the sky. I'd like somebody to tell me what it is.
The lights were seen across a 300-mile corridor, stretching from the Nevada border through Phoenix to the northern edge of Tucson. Mike Kristen was another of the fortunate few who captured the sight on videotape.
And I started to photograph this thing, videotape it, and while I was doing that, another light appeared to the west of it. And as I trained on these lights, all of a sudden this entire sequence of lights came on and formed an arc. They remained steady for like 2 or 3 minutes, and they slowly went out one at a time, and not in the same order that they went on.
That evening, trucker Bill Greiner is hauling a load of cement up the Mount Verde Valley Mountain on his way to Glendale, Arizona. The sight that greets him at the summit is unlike anything he has ever seen.
I was looking for a comet. I never did see the comet, but I saw two very unusual bright lights out in the distance.
Greiner pulls over for a better look. Suddenly, he's startled by a burst of activity from nearby Luke Air Force Base.
And all of a sudden I heard 2 aircraft come flying out of there where they had the afterburners on the gas cars. There's huge flames coming out of them. 2 of them took off. They both flew into the north, made a real sharp turn right behind me, like right over where I was standing. And the 2 lead jets went right up toward the object that was over the base. And before they got to the object, this thing shot up and disappeared. Just went straight up, disappeared instantly. And the only thing that I can relate that even resembles it is if you've ever seen Star Trek, when they go into warp, they disappear, that's it. Well, before all this happened, if somebody would have said anything about this, I would have said you were nuts. But I know 2 things. The government, which is Luke Air Force Base, they knew what was going on that night because they sent the jets up after whatever the hell it was. That's fact number 1. And fact number 2, what I saw ain't from around here, period.
A CNN Time magazine poll at the time of the Phoenix Lights incident found that 22% of adult Americans believe intelligent beings from other planets have made contact with Earth.
I think that the Phoenix Lights event clearly is a watershed. This is a significant event of what is in store for the future.
Issues in science are not settled by taking a vote or taking a poll. There either are facts or there are not, and the scientific community has to go with where the facts lie.
About 40 miles from the Phoenix Valley is the Barry Goldwater Gunnery Range, site of military exercises and flare drops. According to the authorities, just such an exercise was taking place the night of March 13th.
The Air Force went up and dropped an illumination flare. This particular one is phosphorus, and it drops, it's kind of like a little propeller, like paper. It drops very slow, it burns real slow, and it's very bright.
Hey, Sue, take a look at this.
And all the people that's in the Phoenix area would see these lights, and they come down real slow at a far distance, and they would swear they were UFOs.
Oh my God.
It would be very difficult for me to see you dropping flares randomly, to have 4 flares stretched out across the sky that can be in a perfectly straight line, and to stay there. That's what's unusual about it.
The video that I saw a quick glimpse of was intriguing, so I'm going to order a full investigation of this through DPS. We're going to make all the necessary inquiries, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to find out if it was a UFO or whether it was an IFO, which stands for unidentified flying object.
When something like this becomes big in the media and everybody hears about it, and everybody immediately jumps to the conclusion that it must be spaceships hovering there, and it caused quite a bit of stir and a local reaction and political upheaval.
This just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
Anyone who came up with a hypothesis, say that aliens were visiting us, it's not up to anyone else to disprove it, it's up to them to prove it. And I, as a skeptic, would say, well, where is your proof? And he would say, well, here's an eyewitness testimony from somebody. Well, we know that eyewitness testimony just by itself without corroboration is not terribly reliable. That's not how science operates, because you can find all kinds of people who claim they've seen angels, they've seen fairies, they've seen the Loch Ness Monster. And we certainly can't believe in all those things without proof. The burden of proof is always on somebody who claims that these visitations or anything extraordinary is occurring.
One way to look at the problem is to examine the physical realities of intergalactic space travel. Skeptics and believers alike should think about what it would take for a spaceship from any planet to actually fly across the Milky Way. A handful of scientists and engineers is dedicated to just this question, although they would never want to have their names associated with the more radical and vehement UFO advocates. The subject is unavoidable, and to a degree, irresistible.
When you give a lecture on interstellar travel, many people believe that, hey, the answer is out there, it's being kept secret. Why are we talking about solar sails? Why are we talking about lasers or antimatter or fusion? There's anti-gravity. There's space warps sitting there in Area 51 at Roswell. All we have to do is get the military to bring it up. I don't think it's that easy, unfortunately.
NASA has a search with large telescopes looking for other planets like the Earth, potentially, that might be out there. And the question arises, if they exist, what do we do about it? And so we're starting to take the first basic technology and research steps today that might enable us someday to go visit other planets like the Earth.
If alien starships really are shooting across the cosmos, the technologies used are immense. We can get some inkling of what's involved by turning the tables and trying to figure out ways for us to make the trip to other solar systems. As scientists at NASA and in the aerospace industry will tell you, it's not as easy as hitching a ride on the Enterprise.
One thing that happens in television and movies is there's a gross underestimate of the difficulty of space travel. One analogy I like is if you build a modern rocket ship, something like the space shuttle, such a spacecraft could circle the Earth in 90 minutes. We do that all the time. If we launch a payload towards the moon, it takes approximately a week to make a round trip to the moon. With this technology, we could make a one-way trip to Mars in about 9 months. If we sent it to the nearest star and maybe had a swing by of Jupiter to pick up a little bit of extra energy, about 70,000 years, give or take a little.
In talking about how you would actually get to interstellar travel within a human lifetime so that one person could actually make the trip and come back and report it, you could never do that with a chemical rocket. It just doesn't have enough power, it doesn't operate long enough, you would have to carry too much fuel to ever get up to anything close to the speed of light. It's impossible.
Alternatives must be found. A journey of light years begins with baby steps, tentatively seeking alternative means of faster, more efficient propulsion. Engineers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, demonstrate how an interstellar probe pulled along by a solar sail nearly half a mile wide could break all records for distance and speed through space. Its major thrust would come from heading directly into the sun, then swinging around it at close range. The energy of sunlight, photons, would billow the solar sail and fling it into space. In the early stages, such a sail couldn't reach other stars, but it will be an initial step to get us beyond our own solar system, what's called an interstellar precursor mission. Chuck Garner is a scientist at the Jet Propulsion Lab. He's working to develop revolutionary, gossamer-thin materials that could waft a solar sail across the heavens at breathtaking velocities.
This is a carbon fabric. And it's a very, very lightweight carbon fabric that we think will achieve the kind of performance that you need in order to make solar sails for interstellar probe-type missions. What's important about this fabric, first of all, is that even though it's very lightweight, it's stiff. Now you can let this go, and you see it's just not that much different from the density of air.
A solar sail has its limitations. The further away from the sun, the less powerful the photons pushing the sail forward. Other proposals utilize the solar sail idea, but concentrate the propulsive power in a more focused beam, like a laser. Parts of this technology owe their birth to classified work conducted for the Defense Department's anti-missile Star Wars program.
The beauty of using a laser propulsion system is that, in effect, we're taking most of the rocket engine off of the rocket. We're putting it on the ground or maybe in Earth orbit, where it's easy to build it, to maintain it, to repair it. That means the vehicle itself gets a lot lighter. It also means, in the case of beaming momentum in the form of light to the vehicle, that we don't need a lot of extra propellant to drag along.
Light in weight, yes. But the sail would have to be of enormous size, the laser of tremendous power. To get to our nearest star neighbor, Alpha Centauri, would require a sail 60 miles wide, a laser with trillions of watts of electricity. There are alternatives.
Another option that we're examining for interstellar precursors, because it's a technology that we have in hand today, is using a fission system to take advantage of decades of work that we've had in nuclear fission, to use that as a power supply to drive our electric thrusters, our ion engines, to go to nearby interstellar space.
The prototype of such a system is hurtling through space at this very moment. The product of nearly half a century of work, Deep Space One, heading toward a close encounter with an asteroid, is the first NASA spacecraft that, once launched into space, uses an ion engine instead of chemicals to propel it deeper and deeper into the solar system. It's a tantalizing glimpse into the future.
The way I like to think of it is Deep Space One is turning science fiction into science fact. And the science fact now is that we have new capabilities, we can do new things that for the previous 40 years of exploring space we've only dreamed about.
An ion propulsion system is a rocket engine that, instead of burning chemical fuels like a regular rocket, this ion engine takes a gas, in this case xenon, makes it electrically charged, and shoots those ions out the back at a very high speed. And the higher the speed that you shoot them out, the less fuel that you need to get where you want to go.
The ion propulsion system, although it's 10 times more efficient than conventional chemical propulsion systems, has a paradox, and that is it's exceedingly gentle. In fact, the thrust from the ion propulsion system is comparable to what I feel holding this single piece of paper in my hand. That is, the ion engine pushes on the spacecraft as hard as this single piece of paper pushes on my hand. But with time, the effect of the thrust really builds up. It's what I like to call acceleration with patience.
Deep Space One can't get us to another star, but it's an excellent start and a heartening example. Just decades ago, such a technology was deemed impossible. Perhaps other breakthrough space technologies, ideas that we today consider difficult to achieve, even far-fetched, are just around the cosmic corner. Though most scientists are highly dubious, not all are totally dismissive of the claims of UFO proponents. They're curious, After all, name one astrophysicist or engineer who wouldn't be interested if someone revealed credible proof of a technology capable of intergalactic travel. Dr. Bernard Heisch, a specialist in the use of solar power in space, was on a committee headed by Professor Peter Sturrock of Stanford University that investigated the UFO question.
We published a report that was a survey of the members of the American Astronomical Society. And interestingly, about 80% of the astronomers, when they were expressing their opinions confidentially or anonymously, came down on the side that either certainly, probably, or possibly the UFO phenomenon ought to be studied.
Dr. Heisch pursues other unusual scientific interests as well. The wildest focus of his imagination concentrates on something most people aren't even aware exists: energy in a vacuum. If you take everything out of a given space, all the air, matter, heat, light, everything, amazingly, you will discover that there is still some energy left, the so-called energy of the vacuum, known as zero-point energy.
Well, the zero-point field is a background sea of energy that fills the universe, fills everything in the universe that quantum laws say has to exist. And I can illustrate it with a little oscillator. You have a classical oscillator, something bouncing up and down on a rubber band or a spring. Eventually they will come to rest because of frictional forces. Now, if you have an oscillator subject to quantum laws, it'll never come to rest entirely. And that means that all of space will be filled with a certain amount of electromagnetic energy because of those quantum laws. And all of that added together is a zero-point field.
Finding and controlling that kind of energy could provide us with a radical new fuel source, one that would be extracted from outer space itself for a journey to the stars. Another potential source of power has an equally sci-fi ring to it: antimatter, a colossal fuel generated by the creation of the universe itself.
It's another particle. It's just another elementary particle that we can produce in laboratories, that we've detected in deep space, that we know is out there. It's another mystery in and of itself. We don't know where is all the antimatter in the universe.
At the beginning of time, in the gargantuan detonation of the Big Bang, matter and antimatter came into existence. For every electron, proton, or atom of matter, there is an equal and opposite amount of antimatter. But they cannot exist in the same space. When they come together, they explode, annihilating one another in a flash of energy. A large matter-antimatter reaction would dwarf any thermonuclear explosion ever ignited on Earth. If this reaction can be harnessed, a rocket engine of unprecedented force could be created.
Antimatter-matter annihilation is the highest energy density reaction that we know of. The problem with that is that the entire world's production of antimatter today amounts to on the order of 10 nanograms, 10 to the minus 9 grams of antimatter per year. And that's just too small for us to really be able to do anything with from a propulsion standpoint. You might wonder, how about scaling up antimatter production? And that's conceivable, although it would be enormously expensive. So really, we don't know how to go to the stars, and we have some ideas of ways that could do it that don't violate physics, but they're all enormous technical and engineering challenges.
It's restless curiosity about the universe and the possibility of life on other planets that keeps these scientists and engineers going, despite the formidable obstacles. Most of them believe that, odds are, there are other forms of life, even other civilizations out there. Where most of them disagree with the UFO advocates is the issue of credible evidence of regular ET visits to Earth.
Personally, I'd love to believe that there's other life in the universe, but just looking at the vast distances involved, the energy required to get here, and the timescales, I'm very skeptical that we're being visited at this time by a civilization that we could even recognize as such.
Roswell. The touchstone event for all who study unidentified flying objects. The alleged crash of one or more alien craft in the New Mexican desert happened more than 50 years ago but only came to wide attention with the 1980 publication of a popular book on the subject.
It's almost like a shrine of Fatima or something like that for those who believe in the legend of UFOs and alien visitations. A place you can go and visit and imagine what might have happened there.
Physicist and UFO lecturer Stanton Friedman says aliens have the technology and are using it to visit Earth. A co-author of the book that made Roswell ground zero for ufologists, he relates what a local rancher told him about what happened there in 1947.
And he finds an area more than half a mile long, a few hundred feet wide, strewn with strange wreckage. There were pieces, I-beams they called them, small pieces, with strange symbols that you couldn't break, couldn't cut, couldn't burn, very lightweight. There was extraordinarily strong, lightweight material that you couldn't break through with a sledgehammer. There was a foil-like material that you could fold and fold again, and it would unfold, but you couldn't scratch it, couldn't cut it. This is weird stuff. When the wreckage arrives in Fort Worth, Texas, General Roger Ramey, head of the 8th Air Force, had already received a call from his boss telling him to cover it up, I don't care how you do it, send some of that wreckage up here today with one of your Colonel Couriers and never talk about it again.
Well, there really isn't a lot of mystery to what happened at Roswell. If you just take the facts that we're reasonably certain of, we know that there was a project called Project Mogul that was in operation elsewhere in New Mexico at that time. They were launching balloons that were intended to be high-altitude reconnaissance balloons. They were testing the use of balloons as an intelligence gathering device. This was before there were any satellites in orbit. They were testing the feasibility of using high-altitude balloons for keeping track of what the Russians were up to. Actually, it was a little bit of a cover-up. They didn't want to say, this is a device that we built because we're trying to snoop on the Russians, and this thing crashed in the field and the farmer found it. But it was a balloon, and that's what was found. With 5 pounds of tinfoil and sticks is the most amazing thing. Imagine trying to build a spaceship with 5 pounds of tinfoil and sticks.
Gee whiz.
There's no denying that the notion of alien spacecraft has become an indelible part of our popular culture. In addition to the numerous sightings of flying saucer-shaped objects, there have been many reported sightings of V-shaped objects, not unlike those seen by the witnesses of the Phoenix Lights. In August 1951, 4 college professors from Lubbock, Texas, reported a formation of lights flying very fast. A few days later, a Lubbock student took these pictures of mysterious lights in a double V formation. Since 1991, coinciding with a solar eclipse, Mexico City has become a hotbed of UFO activity, with many photos and videotapes produced as evidence. Many are faked, others are optical illusions or identifiable astral phenomena.
There's never been any case where any UFO stayed around and left behind incontrovertible evidence that would be left by a real object, such as an airplane or a meteor or a rocket that crashed or something like that. It just never happens. There's lots of things up in the sky a person could see. There's bright planets, there's bright stars. There's unusual aircraft seen under unusual illumination conditions. We all have a set of expectations of what UFOs are supposed to look like, what they're supposed to do, what they're supposed to contain. So when people see this ambiguous bright light that's out there, then all these preconceptions come into play. It's almost like a cosmic Rorschach blot. You project into it what you think it should contain.
In the UFO movement, many reject official explanations of sightings as natural phenomena, optical illusions, or military aircraft or flares. They believe such stories are shady alibis, proof that the government has much to hide.
UFOs to me are an interesting topic. I do know friends, even in the scientific community, who are very positive about them. I have no better explanation for this than anybody else does. But I don't feel that there is a large conspiracy underway at Roswell, New Mexico. The reason for that is the government of the United States isn't capable of keeping a president's private life secret, and it is not capable of protecting nuclear secrets. Why is it then that the United States government, in conjunction with every other government in the world, keeps this conspiracy going? You know, it just doesn't, to me, make sense.
Many who witnessed the Phoenix Lights in March 1997 scoff at the government claim that what they saw were flares being used in a training exercise. They suspect a cover-up, especially those who not only saw the lights, but who believe they observed some kind of spacecraft as well.
The event happened around 8:30 in the evening, and we're driving north through the desert, and in the northwestern sky was this incredible triangular formation of lights that stretched right across the sky. It was just huge. We pulled off the road with other people too to get out and look at it. We watched it for about 5 minutes. It crept across the sky about 30 miles an hour. It was completely silent. My wife saw lights go on and off, and she saw figures at windows. She saw people, whatever, at the windows. I didn't see that. I was looking at another part of the ship.
That night, Hal and I were coming home in the car, and Hal was going to look for the Hale-Bopp comet. And when I let him out of the car, the first thing he says to me, "Dad, what is that?" The first impression was it was like a carpenter's square with 5 lights set perfectly geometric in it, 1 in the tip and 2 on each side. It wasn't just sitting there, it actually was coming straight at us. It took probably about 15 seconds to pass over us. It seemed like a long, long time. Like I thought it was gonna stop. I don't know what everybody else thought. I thought it was gonna, because we had just seen, you know, it was like Independence Day.
Where it slows down over you, you know, and makes you feel like it's gonna drop something or pick you up or do something, you know?
You got the feeling looking at it. It had a purpose. It had a motive, and it almost like someone coming in for a little peek, a little look. Doesn't want to disturb, doesn't want to make a fuss, just secretly come in and secretly leave.
There's no explanation for this in our world here at all. It's hard for people to really grasp that. We humiliate ourselves sometimes telling people about this.
I could understand people having all kinds of experiences with this craft because of the way the air was electrically charged. It kind of woke you up. It kind of woke up. It was like it was pulling on your spirit almost. And some people have had a very religious experience. Some people felt they were looking at the face of God. It wasn't from this planet, not at all.
They really have a similar story to tell, which means that the outside aliens have all come from the same location. Or these people have all been exposed to the same lore that you and I know of as part of the UFO picture. Many people have seen close encounters of a third kind. The bottom line is that you can't find anyone today that has not been contaminated.
The entertainer and self-described mentalist known as the Amazing Kreskin believes that people are highly susceptible to the popular culture around them and to the power of suggestion. In members of an invited audience, he first runs through a series of exercises to find participants who would be the most prone to suggestion.
You're going to be seeing in the sky forms, 3 forms that can be described as saucers, UFOs, or what have you. You will see them as you will see them. If someone else describes a silver one...
Well, they're coming up here now. Look, look, over here, look. You see? And they all have the 3 colors, and there are 4 of them over there.
I don't see them there.
Where do you see them?
I see them up here.
What color are
they're
they?
silver.
Keep watching.
And they're spinning.
And the rest
Where
of
do
you
see
here?
They're see.
Where are they now? Where are they now? I can't see, it's all foggy. But there's something behind there. Those lights are behind there.
And what do you know?
They're in there. They're in there now.
How do you know they're in there?
I feel them. It's hot.
You can feel the difference.
What I did is I tapped into what was within them. I did not define the boundaries of how they would hallucinate, because what I literally did with a few of them was to create hallucinations.
Hallucinations steeped in UFO mythology. Or perhaps people subconsciously saw what they wanted to see. That may be the case with the Phoenix Lights. Still, something was up there. Ed Ashley, who has worked most of his life in the military aviation business, thinks he knows what it was.
There was a rumor of an aircraft being built by a certain company that looked awful like a UFO, and it used an anti-static propulsion system or something like that, and it was built and designed in several shapes. After the Phoenix Light story came on the news, I called up a friend of mine, and not so many words over the phone, asked him, hey, was that you guys doing that? And he said, yeah.
The best information that I have from some amateur astronomers who witnessed it said that it was aircraft, apparently in a formation. The best estimate would be that this was a night refueling mission.
It's been conjectured, of course, that these are some kind of government craft. But if the reaction of the witnesses is any indication, and that's true, and our government has that kind of technology to inspire and uplift people, all I can say is God bless America.
It's not surprising that the rise of UFO phenomena in America coincided with the outbreak of the Cold War. There was great anxiety and dread fostered by our bitter military and outer space rivalry with the Soviet Union. Looming over all of us was the threat of thermonuclear destruction.
One of the themes of post-war culture is that we have unleashed the atom. And the world and what we can do to the world and to other people in the world is far beyond anything normal. And I think because of that, there is this huge sense of a force much more powerful than we are, that we fear, that maybe we trust, that we have hopes for, and it is so easy to put all of those feelings, not into a human being, because humans are so small, but into something from outer space.
The Cold War also ushered in an era of hush-hush programs to develop high-flying reconnaissance craft and stealth fighters and bombers. Many believe top-secret tests of these incredible new technologies account for many UFO sightings.
In the early days of aerodynamic experimentation, there have been an almost infinite variety of shapes that have been tested. Some of those things have actually become airborne. Some of them have probably traveled around quite a lot, either under their own power or perhaps even as gliders, so that they would have moved in ways that were not considered normal by casual observers. It would be very easy for them to be interpreted as not of terrestrial origin.
The aircraft responsible for the greatest number of UFO mix-ups are the various generations of stealth bombers, fighters, and reconnaissance planes. Civilians aren't used to seeing oddly shaped aircraft performing strange maneuvers at 5 times the speed of sound.
I can remember several times being in the desert on some projects and getting off a shift and going to like a convenience store or something like that, and all of a sudden one of the airplanes will fly over that you were working on that nobody else knows about, and you hear some of the reactions like, what was that? Is that a UFO?
Highly confidential, advanced projects, such as stealth aircraft and who knows what else, are a murky area of the military and aerospace industry known as black ops. Ironically, the public's belief in UFOs may work to the advantage of these clandestine operations.
The Pentagon itself will not confirm or deny the existence of UFOs because it helps them in covering up some of their top secret projects. The Air Force Base might get some phone calls from, concerned citizens wondering what just flew over. And the Air Force would probably play a little stupid, saying, yes, ma'am, where did you see it at? What's your name, your address, that kind of thing. What did you think it was? And then hang up the phone and then just laugh like hell. One of my duties for this company while I was out there, whenever they would conduct tests, I would do what was called diversionary tactics or countermeasures. Well, actually, they made all different kinds of, like, these flying models or kites that we called them, but they were not like any kites that we saw when we were kids. It really makes me laugh to this day because now I see a lot of footage in some of these UFO documentaries of these white lights flying up in the sky. People are swearing that they see UFOs, but actually they're not. They're these guys down there with these big fishing poles waving these kites up in the sky, going back and forth.
Even if some of the sightings are of advanced U.S. military aerospace designs, the most fervent UFO adherents maintain that we cribbed the technology from the observation and recovery of alien spacecraft. Ed Levy thinks otherwise.
I've heard a lot of speculation about a human being just couldn't do that. And in that sense, someone saying that is absolutely right. A human being could not possibly do it. It takes at first hundreds and ultimately thousands of people, each possessing a little piece of specialized knowledge, all working in concert to develop these real exotic pieces of hardware.
As impressive as these feats of technology and sophisticated ingenuity are, they still can't hold a candle to the exotic knowledge required to span the cosmos. If other civilizations are visiting us, and if we are to have any hope of visiting them, the answer may lie not with mere flying machines, but in the phantasmagoric manipulation of space-time itself.
Oh, I definitely believe in UFOs and aliens.
Well, I really doubt all the sightings and all the TV shows that you see on the stuff. I really don't believe that that's real.
It was a ball of light, but it was super large.
No, I have not seen a UFO.
I saw another one in Kansas, and I saw one in Las Vegas for New Year's.
Yeah, I'm sure UFOs were here because there's so many pictures and so many stories.
I'm sure they saw something very real that they thought was a UFO, but who knows what it could be. I'd love to find out, actually.
I think we human beings always need to have some sense that there is a power greater than ourselves out there. Sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's reassuring. But the look and shape and feel of that power is very specifically related to technology. So it's very logical in that sense that the belief in aliens and UFOs exactly corresponds to us sending somewhat identifiable flying objects up into the stratosphere and beyond.
The technological abilities we possess at the dawn of this new millennium would dazzle the finest minds of ancient Greece and Rome. They would think us sorcerers, or even gods. So maybe an advanced civilization is visiting us today, using methods of propulsion and manipulating the fabric of space and time in ways we can only yet imagine.
We are technologically retarded on a cosmic scale. I mean, just down the street there are stars that are 1 billion years older than the sun. Look what we've done the last 100 years, no less 1,000 or 1,000,000. If they're coming here, they're more advanced than we are. The sky is not the limit. There is no limit. Every generation of scientists thinks they know all there is to know. And history tells us they're always wrong.
The laws of physics are daunting and currently impossible to break. For now, Albert Einstein's the presiding judge of the scientific equivalent of the People's Court, and he has set the rules.
One of the problems with relativity that Einstein found was that material objects can't travel at the speed of light. Furthermore, as you get closer and closer to the speed of light, you get very strange, very counterintuitive effects going on. They're completely against everyday experience, and yet they're very real. We have to design scientific instruments to take them into account. But basically, as you get very near the speed of light, your intrinsic mass begins to increase. So it takes more energy to go faster. But the faster you go, the more you weigh. So it takes more energy. And you very quickly get a snowballing effect to the point where any piece of mass, as you start getting very near the speed of light, essentially would take infinite energy to go at the speed of light.
In spite of the odds, the physical barriers, scientists are pushing ahead, seeking answers to gigantic questions. NASA's Breakthrough Propulsion Program is investigating not only such technologies as solar sails and antimatter engines, but theoretical possibilities that were once only the stuff of dreams. One possible method? Anti-gravity. But because that has too much of a Flash Gordon ring to it, scientists prefer the phrase gravity manipulation.
You can think of gravity manipulation as the possibility for thrusting without rockets, because if it turns out to be real, you can consider objects moving in space without having to eject mass. It gets away from the action-reaction kinds of thrust. So what we're looking for, if we really want to talk about interstellar travel, is somehow to manipulate gravity and perhaps the space-time fabric around the rocket to create a bubble around the rocket, a bubble of space-time. To the rocket and to the people in it, it's not traveling faster than the speed of light. But in fact, you're bending space to the point where in fact you are traveling farther than you could.
In 1994, Miguel Alcubierre astonished physicists everywhere by calculating a way to distort space in a manner that would allow warp speed travel, to literally expand the amount of space behind a starship while bunching it up ahead. Such an intergalactic travel technology, the warp or hyperspace drive of television and the movies, is thus, in theory at least, possible.
Warp drive is a catch-all term, I suppose, that alludes to the possibility of warping space and time so as to get round the light barrier. You can't move faster than the speed of light through space, but there's no restriction on how fast space itself can expand.
And you basically treat space in front of you and behind you like a rubber sheet. In front of you, you compress it. Behind you, you expand it. So that when you get where you're going, you just let everything snap back to normal, and now you have in effect moved much faster than the speed of light over a very long distance.
There's another theoretical way of getting out to the great beyond of space, one already celebrated in Hollywood science fiction: wormholes, tunnels in space-time that would be the cosmic equivalent of shortcuts. A wormhole is a place where gravity is so intense that space is ultimately reduced to an infinitely small point.
The idea of how a wormhole works is a little bit counterintuitive. One example that we often use is to take just a sheet of paper and bend it into sort of a U shape, where now, if you're traveling the long way around through normal space, it takes many years to get, say, from Earth to Alpha Centauri or any other star. The wormhole basically takes a shortcut. It bypasses the long, slow path through normal space, so you're able to get there much closer. And in fact, in the extreme limit, you're warping space with the wormhole so strongly that the 2 points basically touch. It would almost be like opening a door on Earth and walking through the doorway, and now you're in Alpha Centauri.
The mysterious nature of this universe may someday be revealed and allow us to use its secrets to travel awe-inspiring distances. If we can dream of doing so, who knows? Aliens may have already made the imagined real, using advanced saucer technology to explore the cosmos, visiting neighboring planets like Earth.
If you look at past history, it tells us that every time that we've explored a new place and found a new place to populate and to use, we've advanced our civilization. I think that the same thing will happen as we go out into space. Even if it turns out that we are the only life form in the universe, the fact that we're going to go to these places and learn that is going to have an effect on us. And if in fact we went to these places and we found that there were other civilizations as well, it would totally revamp our thoughts on our place in the universe.
What seems impossible to us today may startle us with its reality tomorrow. We may travel to other worlds. Voyagers from other solar systems may travel to us, possessing knowledge honed by thousands of years of saucer tech experience, advanced beyond all human capabilities. In the decades and centuries to come, our intellects and imaginations will be challenged and thrilled as never before. It should be quite a ride.